All right, we're back with another Calgary real estate market update. This time going over the April data and everything that's transpired since my last video above. In last month's video, the big word was uncertainty. Consumer confidence was reaching an all-time low, and buyers in most markets were at a standstill, given a fast start to 2025 with a sudden shift in outlook. We had on-off tariff threats. Justin Trudeau resigned, triggering an interim prime minister and a sudden and much anticipated federal election. Since my last video, each candidate campaigned, debates were had, advanced polls, and election day happened, and we now have a new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. I had also mentioned that we are living in a very polarized Canada, with half the people wanting one guy and half wanting the other. And while it may have been pretty obvious who I was rooting for, I was ready for a change. I also respect and admire this country's democracy and having your vote count. So where do we go from here? And given all these massive events, what's happened in Calgary's real estate market during the month of April 2025? As predicted in my video, all of these important events left people feeling uneasy about making big financial decisions, such as buying and or selling a house. Things were a little bit more of the same, with the elections taking most of the attention. Some pockets of the market continued to flourish as if nothing ever happened, while others that were already struggling to keep up with rising inventories accumulated more and more days on market. If this is the type of content you've been looking for, please show your support and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. So what did I see with my clients? Well, I saw just that. A power struggle between buyers and sellers. Buyers were shopping for deals. They were looking at all their options. So some sectors of the market still had abundant showings, while others barely got a showing a week, if that. But just because you had showings didn't necessarily mean that your house would sell. Some buyers wanted to see everything in their price range, while others chose to stop their search altogether. And some had limited options or their hands were tied as they awaited for their own house to sell before making a move. Yet most buyers who did take action were shopping for deals. They said, screw the comparables, I want that house but for less. While others chose to narrow down their choices almost as if they were picking the winner, yet took no action at all with a wait-and-see approach. Then there were those smaller groups of buyers who saw the opportunity and continued just as serious, or the property type that they were shopping for remained hot and competitive. What's interesting about real estate is that it can't be painted with one brush. There's no one-size-fits-all, and there's always more to know about than headline news. You have to seek to understand, and if you can't, then you definitely need a good real estate advisor to educate yourself. While some parts of the market may be hot, others may not be doing so great, and your experience will always depend on what's happening in your particular budget and property type. But what about sellers? How did they react to this buyer behavior? Unfortunately, for buyers, sellers were onto them. And this is where the power struggle comes into play. It's like a teeter-totter. Some sellers were trying to outsmart buyers, with both parties being really stubborn and not willing to budge, requiring both parties to walk away at some points. While some more motivated sellers did adjust their price, other sellers chose the same wait-and-see approach, holding out hope for after the election and thus not choosing to make any changes to their price. As a result, we have the April data. In April, housing inventory rose to 5,876 units, double the number reported last year, even though this number was exceptionally low last year, signaling price growth and not good news for buyers. This year, this number is consistent with long-term trends for April, and sales reached just over 2,200 units, which is 22% below last year's level, but again in line with long-term trends, meaning that things have stabilized, but are still much better for sellers than they were post-2015 and before the pandemic. It is believed that previous gains in immigration, somewhat stable employment levels in Alberta, lower interest rates, and more choices for buyers to choose from have kept our market active and prevented it from going into a full-blown buyer's market. Instead, prices have remained stable. Anne-Marie Laurie, chief economist of the Calgary Real Estate Board, said that the rise in inventory levels have helped the market shift towards balanced conditions with nearly 3 months of supply. However, the conditions vary depending on price range and property type. While prices have been going up for the last 4 years, this increase in supply and decrease in its absorption rate has helped take the pressure off home prices, which is welcome news for buyers and very important news for sellers to keep in mind when pricing their home. Benchmark prices for each property type have remained stable compared to last month, with the exception of detached and semi-detached, which are over 2% higher than last year's levels. For the detached market, sales were 16% lower year over year, with sales slowing down in most areas of the city except for the Southeast, which has seen sales rise over last year's levels. Sales to new listings remained at 58%. Inventories rose to 2,500 units, and the months of supply rose to 2.3 months. Buyers. Last year, this number was less than 1 month of inventory, keeping things extremely tight and prices were rising. This year, things aren't falling apart, but you definitely have more options to choose from, even though this market is still tight. The unadjusted benchmark price reached $769,300, which is similar to last month, but 2% higher than last April, and the pace of price growth is slowing down. However, with the return to office trend, the inner city has experienced the strongest price growth in the detached sector. For semi-detached or duplexes, sales were also down 16% year over year, and the sales to new listings ratio fell to 54%, which put this property type into more balanced conditions with 2.6 months of inventory. Again, much better than the 1 month of supply we had last April. The pace of price growth is also slowing down for this property type, and the unadjusted benchmark price was $691,700, which is still similar to last month, but 3% higher than last year, with again, the city center taking the lead at 5% price growth. What about row townhouses and the apartment sector? Well, while 2024 was the year for townhouses and apartments with rising immigration, 2025 has brought a different climate for these sectors of the market. Row townhouses experienced a 16% year-to-date, not year-over-year decline, and new listings continued to rise, driving the sales to new listings ratio to 51%, with inventories reaching the highest level they've been since 2021, and the months of inventory rising to almost 3%. The unadjusted benchmark price for April was $457,400, which is slightly higher than last month, but below last year's peak price reported in June, with the pullbacks in the North and Northeast district offsetting any gains in other districts. And for apartments, April sales eased by almost 30% from last year's record highs, but were still, thankfully for sellers, far stronger than long-term trends. The apartment sector in Calgary remains the most volatile of all property types. New listings in April reached a record high for the month with 3 months of supply. Conditions are balanced. However, activity ranges significantly based on location. The Northeast District reported the highest months of supply at 7 months, resulting in a year-over-year price decline of 2% and a spread of over 7% from last year's high. Overall, the April benchmark price in the city was $336,000, similar to last year, but still 3% lower than last year's record high. So where do we go from here, and what can we expect for the remaining spring real estate season? Well, I wasn't ready to make any bets on Calgary's real estate market until I saw what would happen after the election. And now that we're just a few days past the election, I feel that I still need to see more market trends and data over the coming weeks to really get a feel for it. Either way, whether you're happy or disappointed with the election results, people wanted more clarity, and now we have it. I won't go into Carney's housing plans in this video, stay tuned for that, but for now, all I can say is that it's time to move forward. For sellers who genuinely want to sell, now is the time to seriously digest what the market is telling us. Remember, a house will sell for what the market is willing to pay. These are factors that are outside of your realtors and your own control. Staying still and taking no action while accumulating more days on market won't sell your house any quicker or for a higher price. And buyers need to realize that sellers may have already brought their price down to a place that makes them uncomfortable and may not be willing to go much further. Buyers need to stop spinning their wheels and getting nowhere and adjust their expectations as well. The spring season is always the most exciting time of the year for Calgary's real estate market, and whether we see a late start to the spring season due to everything that's happened or not, it's time to accept the results and move forward. In my last video, I referenced a quote by Warren Buffett that says, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful." Remember, life is about choices and how you react to them. I get how before things felt unclear, but now we have clarity. Whether you like the outcome or not, we already know somewhat what to expect with another Liberal government in place, and hopefully there's good changes to be had. But with interest rates already at 40-year averages, what's stopping you? What choice will you choose to make of this? How do you win no matter who's in government? And will you stop letting analysis paralysis stop you from getting what you want? There's opportunities that we haven't seen in over 4 years in Calgary, and it's time to not take that for granted, because I have a feeling they won't last as long as you may think.